Pecha Kucha 137, The Savage Sword of Conan. So I've just read one really big book of comics this week. It's so big it's difficult to scan, so I took pictures on my new phone. Was that an improvement? Not really. Not the way I edited the photos, but we'll get to that. So Savage Sword of Conan, a string of comics written and published in the late 1980s. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I have. Volume 14, it God knows how far Conan goes back. But they've been writing it a long time. But one of the first things I noticed is that a lot of the characters define each other by their region of origin. Conan is a Cimmerian. He's greeted as a Cimmerian. He talks to this guy who's a Veneerman. They talk about Aquilonian currency. And then 2 pages later, I'm introduced to a priest of Mitra. So I'm getting some sense of geography. Well, not geography on a map, but a sense of people and their regional ownerships, and the religious culture of Conan's world. Women are second-class citizens. It's kind of like this is all set in some kind of medieval time period. They're either used as love interests to kind of motivate plot points. They're used as kind of MacGuffins, or sometimes they're outright sex objects, like it's 60s Star Trek. Conan is not what you'd call a moralist. He's a womanizing mercenary. He seems to have a certain amount of morals, but he's not above dogging. No, dogging is an actual term. Ignore I said that, right? But sometimes Conan, his loins lead him into trouble. In this one instance where he beds a woman who turns out to be a giant bat monster, which ironically reminds me of the start of Berserk, which I won't talk about because you could probably write an essay on that. Not all women are to be saved or to be bedded. Red Sonja, there was a film about her in the 80s. She is I guess a recurring character in Conan. I haven't read enough Conan to know, but she's a badass and she's in charge of her own destiny, much like that chick in Red Dead Redemption 2, whose name escapes me right now. Is it Bonnie McFarlane? Conan is an interesting protagonist in that he's regularly in situations of peril that he can't get himself out of, and he is in every other issue, if not every issue, saved by someone else. So he's got that in common with, say, 60s Batman. And like I said, he doesn't seem to have morality, but he does have honor. There's this one comic where he had like a blood feud with this other guy, but they spare each other's lives because they don't want to kill each other in a dishonorable way. The guy's wounded, so Conan lets him go. That guy was the leader of a bunch of dudes called Picts, and I don't know if they have anything to do with historical Picts. I have a very distinct impression nobody here is in Scotland. So yeah, it's all a learning experience. One thing I will say about the comics I've read so far, I really do like the art. It reminds me a lot of like Lone Wolf and Cub. It feels like it's a lot of brushwork with heavy blacks, good strong contrast. It's easy to read, and it's definitely helping it go down well for me. One thing that does surprise me is the amount of gore and the kind of the maturity of the content. There's a lot of war. There's a lot of dudes getting beheaded and just outright violence. And this is an 80s comic, and it was a Marvel comic, which is can't imagine them doing this now. I know they have the Marvel Max line, but that's slightly different. And I find that the dialogue does a lot of good credit and service to my enjoyment. People just seem to talk in a way that is appropriate for the situation. There's not a lot of humor, but it's not humorless. But it is a grim world. I mean, there are kids being like sold into slavery and stuff, and this is a story where Conan and Red Sonja basically go and get those kids out of slavery. So there's a moralist line, but it's pretty close to the ground, you know, which I like. It's not just one big man swinging swords at other big mans. Sometimes you do get kind of monsters and magic. It seems to be sparing from what I've read, but it's definitely there. And it does mix up. I mean, there's been quite a variety in the stories that I've read so far. And as I mentioned before, this is a Marvel comic, which is strange because the actual book I'm reading has been published by Dark Horse. So Conan's publishing history was interesting enough that I decided I'd better go on Wikipedia and have a look at this. Yeah, because Conan isn't like... I mean, what was I saying? Yeah, it was just the history of like Marvel taking a gamble on this fantasy story, again with the extreme violence. It was modestly successful, and it seems Conan has been generally ever since. This is, I guess, why they make movies about it. And I think a lot of why I've been enjoying it so far is it has a lot in common with Fist of the North Star. It's about manly men in a bad world being slightly less bad than all the other bad men, so technically they're the good guys. And they do typically look out for women and children, so yeah, there you go. To truncate like a 130 comic book into 20 seconds. So next week I'm actually going to try and get some stuff done. I did pick up DC's Comics Guide to Penciling by Klaus Janson from the library. It's not like I want to learn to draw like Klaus Janson, but he is an excellent compositional artist, and his fundamentals are definitely there. And Frank Miller definitely owes the guy a medal for his work on The Dark Knight Returns. I will see how much of this book I'm going to use to influence the work I do. I should do some daily sketches, might get some fan art. I have been thinking about doing a Colt Cougar Draws Conan. What I'm specifically going to do next week, I don't know, but the idea is to actually do something for a bloody change. The security course I'm on doesn't seem to be full-time anymore, so I've sort of run out of excuses, although I haven't run out of library books, so there will be more comics, that much is sure. But that brings us to the end of Pecha Kucha. Was it 134? Was it 137? Whatever, I will see you next time.